I like being roped up with my friends.
You know, there's just so many anecdotal things about reaching the top and metaphors about, you know, taking one step.
Once you start soloing, it's kind of an addictive thing.
Can everybody hear me? Howdy, folks. Welcome to CLIMBTALK Radio, streaming live on the World Wide Web from the Boulder Outlook Hotel, Colorado, USA. USA! With our special musical guest tonight, Ben WALBURN.
WALBURN.
Play it for us, Ben. Now for our hosts of the show, Michael Francis Brooks and Dave McAllister. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, thanks for joining us on CLIMBTALK, the road show here at the Boulder Outlook. My name is Mike Brooks. Dave McAllister from PumpFactoryRoad.com will be the co-host tonight here at the Boulder Outlook. And we're going to start off with climber, mountaineer, entrepreneur, Chris Warner. Chris, thank you for joining us on CLIMBTALK.
Welcome, Chris.
Hey, it's my pleasure to be here. Although I must be coming from far away because there's some big peaks in the background.
Not as big as you've climbed, though, I don't think.
No, I think those are some of the peaks I have climbed.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's one of my pictures.
So welcome to the show tonight.
Uh-huh.
I have a question for you. Let's start at the beginning. You're from the East Coast. What brought you to Colorado?
I was running away, actually, from a woman.
Yeah. Oh, boy, I can relate to that.
I know. And I came to Boulder, of all places, to run away from women. And that's, you know, I had actually been living in Massachusetts and, you know, soured relationship, came out here and just fell in love with the Flatirons and went to CU Boulder and taught skiing in Eldora and eventually left here again to move to Hawaii. My first job when I left Boulder was as the adventure consultant to the county of Maui.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of climbing there?
No, not back then there wasn't. But I was just there again about 3 weeks ago and met some bartender who was a climber. And he was trying to tell me about how great it is. We've got like 4 routes on Maui. So, like I have like 140 in my backyard, buddy. So.
7 boulder problems and 4 routes.
Mm-hmm.
Your protege just put up a bunch of climbs out there, a bunch of boulder problems, Jason KEHL.
Wow, great. In Maui? I think he was in Waco all winter.
No, this was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It was pretty sweet, though. Kick it off, man. Ask a question.
So, Chris, recently you had a successful ascent of a K2.
Yeah, but it didn't start that way, right?
Tell us about that.
Well, I went there first in 2002, and nobody summited that year. We, you know, had a pretty disastrous trip. It ended on my birthday, actually, when I watched a man fall 5,000 feet through the air. And the first time he hit, it was a gigantic explosion of red, and it bounced out another 500 feet, another 500 feet, and eventually came to a stop 500 feet away from us. And we knew he was dead. He was the most traumatized human being I'd ever seen. In fact, when we climbed up to him, you know, there was a lot of blood everywhere, and his legs were folded up underneath his back, and we had to unfold him. And so I grabbed underneath the arm pads and kind of lifted him up, and another guy grabbed his legs and pulled him out, and we put him inside of a down jacket, and his head was so, you know, mangled because the back of his skull had been crushed in. And so none of the parts were in the right place, like Mr. Potato Head with one eye here and another down there and the nose off on the side. And his skin had actually turned gray and because all the blood had rushed out. It made his teeth seem to glow in the dark. And so we tried to wrap the hood of the down parka over his head and tie it as tight as we possibly could as a knot. And then we lowered him down to where everybody else was, and I got down to the bottom, and you know, we packaged him up and everything. And all of a sudden, I felt these stabbing pains in my stomach, and I literally bent over and I looked up at my teammates, who were the greatest climbers in the world, and I said, I'm going home. It's my birthday. I can't stand this anymore. And I quit. And when you quit on K2, like of course you're pouting, right? So, but it's an 85-mile pout to the nearest road. And so you're kicking stones for like 5 days. And then you have to travel for 2 days to get to an airport and so on. So it's like 9 days of pouting before you're finally home, So anyway, got home. By the time I was home, I was done pouting and said, I got to figure out a way to go back. So I went back again in 2005. And that year, nobody died. And nobody got to the summit again. And in 2007, I was finally able to go again. And that year, we were lucky. We got to the summit. It was actually the record summit day on K2. 18 people reached the top that day, and 2 people died. So it was pretty dramatic.
2002, you walked away from the mountain.
Yeah.
What brought you back in 2005?
I'm a really bad at failing. Like, I fail often, but I would prefer to clean up the balance sheet eventually. So if I fail once, I want to go back and clean up my act. But I failed twice. And then I was like, third time going back, I said, all right, I'm going to go back and climb K2 by a new route, which we actually tried to do. But we failed on that on our second day. In fact, we were walking across a completely flat section of glacier, and it just snowed 6 inches the night before. And as we were walking tied together, by a 40-foot rope like mountaineers do, the guy in front of me just disappeared. Shot in this crevasse, and I was tied to the rope, and he was winning this tug of war, because he was an accelerating body falling through free space, and my feet got shut out from underneath me, and I was being slid right towards his crevasse, and suddenly the ground beneath me collapsed, and I fell into a separate crevasse. So he was 25 feet in one crevasse, and I was 10 feet down in another crevasse, and I thought I was tied to a dead body, and I'm like, well, how am I going to get the heck out of here, And then eventually I fell down deeper, and I knew he had actually gone up. And then so I attached the Jumar to the rope and climbed up a little bit, and then I went down deeper again, and I climbed back up again, and eventually we had our 2 heads facing each other outside of different little holes. And we were like, all right, how do we get out of here? Because we had a plan it, so we both launched out of the crevasse at the same time. If one guy got out before the other, then we would both be dragged into the second crevasse. So it was pretty crazy. I think it was the first time ever that 2 mountaineers fell in 2 separate crevasses at exactly the same time. So it was one of those times when you were not fated to die that moment.
So after that kind of trauma, like you see a dead body, I think most non-climber normal people would say, maybe I've had enough of this. Like, maybe I'm going to start mall walking.
Yeah.
So after that kind of trauma and falling down crevasses and going through these struggles, what keeps your motivation high to go into that, particular danger zone?
Well, it's like everything in climbing is that you don't start with the biggest risk. You start with small risk, and you build risk upon risk upon risk to get up to this capacity. So I had seen a lot of people die. I had actually, the first person I ever felt the first dead person I ever dealt with, the guy who had fallen out of a window and landed flat in his back. In the process of falling, though, he hit an electric wire, and his whole face was burnt up. So when he landed on the ground, everyone was screaming. I come running out, and I'm starting to give him CPR, and I couldn't even give him mouth to mouth because his lips had been electrocuted, and they were just all pretty rough. But I gave him chest compressions, and I felt literally his soul moving through my body, and it was super powerful. And at that moment, I knew that all I could do was to push as much love into this person as I possibly could, because when you leave this earth, the last thing you want to feel is somebody's fear. You really want to feel their love, and that's all I did. I just gave him a lot of love, and I actually brought him back to life, but he died then another 45 minutes later. And that was the first guy that I dealt with. But then, you start going on these 8,000-meter peaks. I guided Everest 3 different times, and you're seeing people die all the time up there. And, I stopped counting at 28, and, just didn't think it was worth it anymore. But having said that, I've never had a single one of my partners die. And I've been on 180 international expeditions, so I think I'm pretty conservative.
You said 180 international expeditions.
Yeah.
Say, for example, I want to go climb Everest tomorrow.
Yeah, good time.
What would that entail? Could you take care of me?
It would entail a checkbook, and as long as the check doesn't bounce, I absolutely could make it
happen. I think you're out, man.
Yeah.
Maybe we could all chip in to send Mike Brooks to Everest, because it is Everest season, Yeah.
Oh, really?
So you need a down parka, right? $65,000 and a passport, and you're ready to go.
Okay, cool.
You're 2/3 of the way there.
There you go. So what about, could you guide on K2? I
think it would be overly ambitious and perhaps pathological to think that you could guide on K2.
Really?
Yeah, because you can't you know, in guiding, you know, you're being hired not just to get somebody to the summit, but to get them home alive, right? So when I guided Everest all the time, I'd sit down with these clients and say, you know, I don't work for you. Yes, you paid me $65,000, but I really work for your mom. And they'd be like, no, wait a second. I'm a 47-year-old grown man. You can't be telling me that my mom still makes all the decisions. And I'm like, yes, your mom still makes the decisions. Because on summit day, chances are I'm going to have to turn you around. And if I turn you around, right, your mother is going to love me. But if I don't turn you around and you go up and die, your mother's going to hate me and haunt me. And I would much rather disappoint you than disappoint your mother. And that's, you know, they would get that eventually. And it's always better to have a higher authority in any of these kinds of negotiations, especially when you're dealing with egomaniacs.
Sure.
You know, they need to know that something greater than them is going to whoop their butts if they don't get their act together.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That was a good point, Chris.
So what drives one to the 8,000 meter peaks, to the high mountains? I mean, you don't start there, of course. This isn't like bouldering where you go out and buy a pair of shoes and you can be an expert in 2 months.
Yeah,
what's the draw?
I think it was. So I'm from a different generation,
No
I
offense,
think,
boulders.
than most. Like, you know, I'm 47, right? So I started climbing 30 years ago, basically. And back then, everybody who was in climbing was a ne'er-do-well. I mean, I was brought climbing the first time by my parole officer. So it was a little different world, like, you know.
Just like most people in this room.
Yeah. So, you know, like, it was the only kids who got that experience were, you know, were hoods. And so the hoods in the woods thing worked for me. So we went out and went climbing, and you know, I fell in love with it. And back then, everybody kind of knew each other. It was a tight community. And you would sit around the campfire at night, and you would talk about adventures and how to, you know, live through adventures. And that's how we shared all this information with each other before the internet, you know. So back then, you kind of were taught that you have to do this, you know, progression. It was a pilgrimage. You know, you went to Colorado and you climbed here, and you climbed Long's Peak in the summer, then you climbed Long's Peak in the winter. And eventually, you went to Peru, and then you went, you know, kept building up. And I did my apprenticeship in 6,000 meter peaks for years, long before I ever just thought about going to an 8,000 meter peak. And then, you know, eventually ended up on 8,000 meter peaks, then guiding Everest, et cetera. And then, you know, just kept going from there.
What do you think, Dave? You think we should take a question from the audience?
Anybody have a question? Would be the contingent question there. Nobody?
Gore, can you jump in on that?
So I don't know that much about the success rate on K2, but I know a lot of people have died and not very many people have summited. So what's the ratio to the number of people who have summited to the number of people that have died trying?
It's not that high. It's only 35%. So we have this death to summit ratio in all these 8,000 meter peaks, right? So like Everest, there's been about 210 people who've died over time. And most people who die on Everest actually die on their way down, right? And they die by sitting down and falling to sleep, right? So they die of exhaustion. And then so there's been 210 deaths. There's been about 6,000 summits. So it's like a 1.5% death to summit ratio. Where on K2, there's been 309 people on the top and 105 people died. So it's 35%.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
Jesus. So your Everest summit bid in 2003 almost ended, or did end. Your summit bid did end in an accident.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Well, we were guiding the first ever reality TV show. So it was with OLN and ABC. And we had these 5 contestants that had made it all the way to Mount Everest. And we were on the north side. And we were pushing for the summit. We had gotten to high camp. And we were going to leave at about midnight to go for the top. And the night before, there was just a boatload of people that had gone up the North Ridge. And the North Ridge has 3 different technical sections, the first, second, and third step, and each one was a bottleneck. And so crowds had built up at the bottom of the first step, and the bottom of the second step, and the bottom of the third step, and eventually people made it to the summit, but really late in the afternoon. And on their way down, they started running out of oxygen, it got dark, and people started calling on the radio, crying, and having frostbite, and cerebral edema and stuff. And so a cameraman and I went out, and we gathered 22 people, and brought them back to our tent, our tents, and we had all of our clients and cameramen and Sherpas and stuff taking care of these people. It's a gigantic triage situation. Well, the next morning it was obvious we couldn't go to the summit. We had to help these people down. You know, people literally were snowblind. And so I was lowering a guy who had snowblindness down this slope, and we were about 27.5 or 27,800 feet. And about 250 feet above me, a Sherpa threw an oxygen tank out and went sliding down a snow slope and then went off a cliff and went 85 feet through the air and hit me in the back of the head. And an oxygen tank is, it's 6.5 pounds. And when that thing, is free falling through the air, it's going pretty damn fast. And it hit me in the back of the head, and the sound was so loud, like a baseball bat hitting somebody's head. And the cameraman grabbed the radio off my shoulder strap and started yelling, "Chris is dead, Chris is dead." Well, when you go to the summit of Everest, you pass over 8 dead people. And, when you die up there, you don't rot. So you're there forever. And maybe you're a little bit bluer than you were the day you die, But so the last thing I thought was, why would I want to spend the rest of eternity freezing my butt off, somewhere below the summit of Everest? I'm like, I got to get out of here as fast as I can. And so I just started racing down the hill, and I kept racing and racing and racing like Forrest Gump, and eventually ended up at Johns Hopkins Hospital. And they did these X-rays and MRIs and MRAs and stuff, and they look, what'd you do? Like, you look like you bounced down I-95 without a helmet, like a motorcycle accident. And it, caused all sorts of crazy problems. I had, all sorts of issues for about a year. And then finally I was like, all right, I'm done having issues. And I went right back to the Himalayas. So,
You said you had the first reality show. Did you get that gig, or did they come to you?
It was a long story, but it was, somebody had to come to me first, and I passed it off to a friend of mine. And then he kept begging me to come on the show. And I was done with Everest then, actually. I was like, I'd already guided it. And I'm like, I don't want to ever go back there. I was more interested in things like K2. I just like to go to new places whenever I can. So, but eventually, I succumbed to cash. And it was the dumbest idea I ever, made. Yeah, I made a bunch of cash, but it wasn't worth it. So,
right.
Yep.
So you talked about how you're done with Everest, and I think it's pretty notorious the way that the guiding industry on Everest and just the Everest itself as an industry has changed over the years.
Yeah.
You have firsthand accounts of that.
Yeah, and I'm guilty as charged, right? So it was very different. Like in 2000 and 2001, our clients were amazing. In 2001, we had a woman who'd already summited Everest from the south side coming back with us, right? So she became the first American woman to summit Everest from north to south side. We had a Scottish mountaineering guide. We had 2 Swiss guides, including one was a Swiss woman who became the first Swiss woman to reach the summit. We had a Marine Corps, a Marine Recon major. So the Recon is the 1,000 toughest Marines, and he had done 3 of the eco challenges and stuff like that. So we had a Japanese kid who had started the year on the North Pole, had skied until he hit water, got in a kayak until he hit Canada, got on a bicycle to the southern tip of Argentina, got on a small plane, and then skied again to the South Pole, then came to Everest. So everybody was like that. They were all super hardcore mountaineers, right? 2003 comes along, and we have the opposite. Although they were amazing athletes, they were all incredible endurance athletes, but it was a reality TV show, so it was a completely different dynamic. And then I never guided, the aging used car salesman, the dentist who wants to, save the world one tooth and mountain at a time. So I never did that part of Everest, but you see that now, and it's completely different. Like just the infrastructure. Infrastructure gets people to the summit of Everest. So everybody knows that there was 10 expeditions to Mount Everest before the first guys got to the top. Well, the 9th expedition was led by the Swiss, and the Swiss got to within 600 feet of the summit, and they had 31 climbers, including some guy named Tenzing Norgay on his 5th expedition to Everest. So the British were panicked. Oh my goodness, we almost lost, this crown opportunity to get to the summit of Everest first. And so they came back the next year with 50% more climbers. So 46 climbers instead of 31 climbers. And they brought that guy, Tenzing Norgay, who had been to within 600 feet of the summit. So when Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay finally reached the top of Everest, they only pioneered 600 feet of climbing terrain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the way that the story is spun is a little bit different. The truth is, Everest is climbed through infrastructure. And today, they get clients to the top not by giving them 2 bottles of oxygen, but not by 3, but they might give them 5 to 10 bottles of oxygen to get people to the top. They'll start people on oxygen as low as 22,000 feet. Now, oxygen is the greatest performance-enhancing drug that you can have, right? And if you put it on, you've effectively lowered the summit of Everest by about 3,000 feet. So, if you want to get, your local used car salesman to the summit of Mount Everest, best thing to do is to give them lots of oxygen. And that's how they get more and more people to the summit. So that's, Mike, when we go, I'm going to spend most of the $65,000 on oxygen for you.
Feeding you oxygen the whole time.
Okay, that'll work. Now you
Yep.
mentioned that you a Sherpa threw off an oxygen bottle from somewhere.
Yeah.
Is that standard practice?
No, but it's a little chaotic day. I mean, he had been part of the groups that had gone up the night before, the day before, and they came down. Everyone was exhausted. It was chaos. I mean, it really was chaos up there. So, I don't blame him, but it is a problem. And, the wild thing is when you hear these oxygen, like you'll be coming down the North Ridge or something like that, and you'll hear these explosions because these pressurized canisters, when they hit a rock, they explode.
Sure.
So, yeah, you'll hear them occasionally.
You want to take a break?
Do we want to take a break?
Let's get some guitar and take a quick break.
Folks, thanks for coming to Climb Talk on the road, live at the Boulder Outlook. We want you guys to live the good life, and tonight Gregory has given us some backpacks. Someone is going to get lucky in the audience this evening. Let's hear it, Ben. Folks, welcome back to Climb Talk live at the Boulder Outlook. We're all seeking adventure, and our friends at Sierra Designs also brought us some goodies. Someone's going to get lucky in the audience tonight. Giveaways later. Get your thinking cap on. It's going to be trivia. Ben, thanks for the music. Back to our hosts. Mike and Dave.
Okay, we're back here at Climb Talk in the Boulder Outlook Hotel. My name is Mike Brooks. Dave McAllister from Pump Factory Road is the co-host tonight. We have Chris Warner here at the Outlook. Soon we're going to have Kelly Cordes joining Chris. And thank you for joining us on Climb Talk. That's your cue, Dave.
That's my cue?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do a little transition. So, you are an entrepreneur. You open some of the biggest rock climbing gyms on the East Coast, Earth Treks. First of all, talk about those, and then we'll segue in. When did you open your first Earth Treks?
We opened the first one in 1997, kind of in the earlier days of climbing gyms, and which was great because we didn't know anything about the business. We had, I taught climbing, and it was a bunch of old outward bound instructors and myself that started, but we had no idea how to run a climbing gym. In fact, the first day we opened, we had no idea how much money to put in the cash register. And so it was a little bit of a disaster for roughly about 10 years. And then over that time, we learned what it took to run them, and we opened a second one in 2002. And we opened our third one in 2005, and we just did massive expansion. So during the recessions, when everybody else was, hoarding their cash or not having any cash, we were spending it like crazy, growing. So it's been a fun process.
And you guys host. Did I cut you off?
You did, but I'm used to it. Go ahead.
Oh, you son of a. You guys host some of the biggest comps in America, like the rock comp.
Yep, we probably some of the largest indoor comps ever we've held. Yeah, and they've all been amazing events. We've had, great luck because people like Chris Sharma, have wanted to come back.
Chris
Sharma, yeah, he's a skinny little kid who can barely climb, but we feel sorry for him, so we'll let him win. So, yeah. And we've had some, just masterful people that have come through, like Jason KEHL, who had been started with us as a route setter, back in 1998. And I remember the first time he set a 5.6. And I climbed this thing. I'm like, Jason, this is not a 5.6. It's like a 5.9. He goes, but I've never climbed 5.6. I'm like, what do you mean you've never climbed 5.6? He goes, no, first climb I ever did was a 5.10. And he kept going from there. So yeah,
that's disgusting.
Yeah.
So how's the comp in the gym scene changed from like the fledgling years of '97 to now, where you have the ABS Nationals, the Unified Bouldering Championships, the Rock Comp?
Well, I think climbing, so in terms of demographics, has obviously shifted away from, people in their 20s and 30s, single, smelly people to families, right? So it's more suburban oriented.
He's talking about you, Dave.
Moms crank a lot harder than we crank, so it's super cool in that way. And I think with the fact that people have developed it as a little bit more sophisticated business model, it's become a lot more professional, and as a result of that, it's become a career for people. So where before everybody had to give their soul to work in a climbing gym, to be paid $13,000 a year or whatever, now climbers can earn a living, and I think that's one cool thing we've done to give back to the sport, was provided a career path for people. My father was an accountant. And he used to be so angry with me when I first started the business. This is the dumbest thing ever. It's never going to work out. Like, what are you thinking? How could you be so silly as to open a climbing gym? And then, right before he died, I showed him our books. And he was like, oh, my God, I guess I got it wrong.
Buy some stock
Thank
in
God
this?
my son wasn't an accountant. So, yeah.
So why did you open your second gym if the first gym was such a nightmare?
Well, the first one was too crowded. And frankly, we had climbed all those walls. And we needed new ones. So, climbing really was a clubhouse thing, right? You built one clubhouse. And then you got all your friends to come there, and girls wanted to join and all this other stuff. And you had to open a second clubhouse, and then it kept going from there. Yeah.
Oh, it looks like we're running some of that content. Is that K2 on that monitor?
No, this is actually Everest. So that's the good view, the Everest infrastructure that gets you to the top.
Is that one of the bottlenecks that you were talking about earlier?
This is low down. This is in the Khumbu Icefall on the south side. So this is a picture taken when I was climbing Lhotse, which is the fourth highest peak in the world, which shares most of the route with Everest. Yep.
So you did Everest, you did K2. What's next?
I'm hoping, a lot of little things, but I'm hoping personally to go to Makalu next spring. I've been on Makalu before. I caught pneumonia and had to get helicoptered off. So,
What would you say? You've summited like 145,000 or 145 peaks over 19,000 feet.
Yeah, a lot. I'm not sure the number. I've done 5 8,000 meter peaks, 100 plus 19,000 foot peaks. I've been to the summit of Cotopaxi in Ecuador like 52 times. Or something. So yeah.
For work or play?
Yeah, for work. Yep.
So question, obvious question, what does K2 mean? And why do they call it that?
Well, when the British were mapping the world's mountains in, in that part of South Asia, they would not give a mountain a name unless they could find out its local name. And so nobody had a local name for K2, right? Because it couldn't be seen from any village, so nobody knew what it was called. They didn't even know it existed. Oh. And they thought it was the second highest peak in the Karakoram range. So the K stands for Karakoram, and 2 stands for the second tallest. They thought a peak called Masherbrum was the highest.
Wowza. Nice question.
It was.
Take notes. You're going to win a Gregory backpack if you remember that. That's not true. So out of all the peaks you've climbed, what would you say are the most technical?
Well, I've done some cool stuff. So you guys know Amida Blam, right? So the west face of Amida Blam is 7,000 feet tall. And I did a new route in the winter up that. And it was 60 pitches. We thought it would be, like a day trip, and it ended up being 5 days. So I got frostbite at 9 fingers, and yeah. I remember sitting in the tent at the bottom, looking at my frozen fingers and crying. Like, oh my God, they're gonna cut them off with a scissor. But I kept them.
I didn't know mountaineers cried so much.
I know. What a bunch of wieners.
Spanish mountaineers cry all the time.
Yeah. That's bad.
Yeah, for them.
Yeah, for them. So also, I'm going to lob you a softball here. You speak to corporate groups about
how to build teams, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you've built a successful business that's been noted by Smart CEO magazine, and you've been named one of the 25 business people we admire, I think.
By those guys, yeah.
Yeah.
Not by my employees.
So here's the softball. You can hit it out of the park here. Do you think that managing a team at altitude or in those kind of dangerous environments leads you to become a more successful business person?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you're, in mountaineering, it's a little bit simpler, right? Because there's an obvious goal that everybody's working towards. But the trick with any team is to help people or prevent people from putting their personal desires ahead of the group's goals. So like on K2, when we went to the summit, we had 2 different people died. And they were both preventable deaths. And both times, the individual had made decisions, right, that put themselves ahead of the team. And as a result of that, there was consequence. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. And you see that all the time with groups. Everybody sees that in their workplace, right? So somebody who, is a little bit more important than anybody else, they kind of bring everybody else down.
I think he's talking about us, Steve.
Yeah.
Probably. So I was going to say, how do you I mean, to me, it would strike me that somebody who's heading up an 8,000 meter peak probably has a bit of an ego, for better or worse. It would seem to me that cadre of people have pretty healthy egos. So how do you manage them in those situations?
Well, we have lots of opportunities to become humble too, right? So when we see people die, when we fail a lot, because mountaineers fail all the time, then that hopefully will humble us. One of the things when you go on a trip is to make sure you pick your partner as well. And if you choose partners who are more egomaniacal, then you're going to have a bad time. Even if you get to the summit, it's not going to be worth it, right? So, it's like that old thing, it's better to have partnerships than accomplishments. Like, on your deathbed, who cares if you're surrounded by trophies? You'd rather be surrounded by people that love you. So who you pick is more important than what you climb. So I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And then just like with a team, that I'm working with, it's the same thing with your team you're climbing with. You got to talk about values all the time. And when we went to K2, we had 3 goals. And sports psychologists talk all the time about you have to have quantitative goals and qualitative goals. So we had 2 quantitative goals. Number 1 was we were all coming home. And number 2, we would all summit together. And that was key for us to keep the team together. There was only 3 climbers on the team, but it was critical to us that 3 of us got to the top together. We knew that actually increased our chances of all coming home alive. So we were key on that. And then the third one was our qualitative goal, and that was to climb the mountain in a style that we'd be proud of forever. And that's why originally we tried to climb K2 by a new route. It didn't work out. We tried it by a second new route. That didn't work out either. And eventually we went up the normal route on it, and we walked away feeling like we did it in a style that we were proud of. Because in the end, things didn't go very well. And so there we were cleaning up the mess for all these misfit toys and trying to help everybody get back down off the mountain alive.
You said your first ascent attempt didn't go very well. What was the problem?
Well, the first place we went is where we fell in the crevasse and almost died, right? So we were now 3 miles from the bottom of the mountain, and there was 10,000 crevasses between us. We're like, we're not going any further this way. Then we went up another way, and we went up about 5,000 or 6,000 feet over 3 weeks just trying to get up this thing, and we hit this section of mountain where literally it was good weather that destroyed our expedition because it was so warm that rocks that had been frozen in place for 10,000 years were suddenly freed and they were tumbling down. And those rocks were big, like, car-sized rocks, microwave-sized rocks. And we knew we would die if we went any further. And wet snow avalanches coming down either side. So we had to bail, go all the way back to base camp, and then start again. After having been there for 45 plus days, we had to start again at the bottom and start working our way to the top.
So I imagine you had to spend a lot of tent times, waiting out the storms, waiting out the weather, waiting out whatever. How'd you spend your time in the tent?
Crying.
We didn't. Most people spent most of their time in base camp in the tent. We were a little bit more driven. Like we had already wasted 45 days, so we had to go to work if it was blowing 40 miles an hour, if it was minus 20. So we went to work almost every day. And as a result of that, we'd be out for 8 days, run out of food, come back down. It moved gear all the way up to Camp 3 or whatever. And really, probably as a result of that, we had kind of, established a mystique about our team as being a little bit, tough. And so as a result, when we worked with all the other teams to create a plan to get everybody now to work together to try to get to the top, everybody was willing to work together to make it happen with us. And with that, JVonD, do you want to roll the footage to go to the summit of K2? So we're 75 days into this expedition, and here we are leaving Camp 4 at 27,000 feet to go to the summit.
So we'll call you about 2 hours south of bottleneck, over.
Okay, you have a good trip, over.
Okay, over now. I don't know if you can see anything up there. A couple of lights. They're in the bottleneck. Don, some Koreans, some Russians.
He said that the Koreans, it seemed, were going to head out at 11 and that they were going to head out at 12, but it sounded like everybody's backed up, so they're about an hour and 20 behind where they thought they were, but it sounds like they're rearing to go. So the night and the summit push has begun.
Been pretty dramatic so far. The Korean team was ahead of us. They were all on oxygen, and one of their Sherpas fell down the south face to his death. And I don't think we'll ever find his body. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Base camp.
Base camp copy, over.
The slope that they're on right now, the famed 45 or 55 or 65 degree bottleneck traverse slope is in fact freaking steep. And you can see it from here, and Chris is on it right now, or at the base of it anyways.
Unbelievable. Considering how hard we've been working, this is a big mountain.
Hey, base camp, can you read me, over?
Yes, loud and clear, Chris.
Okay, we're turning the corner on the traverse.
Yeah, we got another 3, maybe 350 to go. Here comes Don, the summit of K2. Awesome job, Don.
The whole base camp, you hear just applause erupting in every different camp, and we're all so excited for you, over.
It's very, very hard summit in these conditions. We either had knee-deep snow or bulletproof ice.
Oh, that's one of the hardest summits I've ever had. Oh, yeah? And I think I only specialize in hard ones.
We left at 1, so that's 15 and a half hours for the summit. I think I just pray that we can make it back safely. There's a long way before we have to fix lines, over.
I love that right there. Okay, we're back. We had a question from someone in our chat room. What was the question, Dave?
We do. Can I hold on from that for 1 second?
Okay,
ask
go
something
ahead.
relevant. So my question is, first of all, that is surreal to see people summiting on K2.
Yeah, it was cool. You know, the problem is we got to the summit at 4:30 in the afternoon, which is horribly late. So we were descending into darkness, and it was 9:30 before we got back to the tent. But as we were going down off the side of the mountain, there was 2 Italians still going up, and of those 2 Italians, only one guy ever made it back.
Yikes. So how does a camera team and a film crew, how does that affect the dynamics? Because you've been, of course, hundreds of times without a camera crew, but how does having those extra people there, do you find it changes people's behaviors?
Well, we were the camera guys. So we had gotten this deal with NBC. It's a long story, but the very short of it was I got to get a meeting with the president of NBC Sports and his 6 senior vice presidents, and I told them I was going to go climb K2, and they were like, "Great, can you bring us back an Emmy?" I'm like, "Of course, sir." And I'm like, "How much are you going to give me?" And he goes, "Son, you're no Oprah. This is an opportunity. Oprah gets money, you get opportunities." And so we ended up being a little short-changed. And so we went to Best Buy and bought these little handy cams, and we shot 42 hours worth of film. We came back, and NBC went bonkers. They thought this was the coolest thing ever. They showed it first on a Sunday afternoon in December. They showed it again on a February afternoon, and then nominated us for 6 Emmys. And we got to go to the Emmy Awards, which was absolutely spectacular. My wife is smoking hot, so she's walking up the aisle of the Emmys, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, who is that star?" And I'm like 10 feet behind her. I'm like, "Yeah, man, that's my wife." So anyway, it was great, but we didn't win. But it was still super cool to go to the Emmys. Yep.
Nice.
And we never got a dime. They still play it all the time. You know, like Comcast bought NBC, and then what used to be OLN became Versus. Now it's NBC Sports, and so they show it all the time. It's been on probably 15 or 20 different times, that TV show, and I never got a penny. Yeah.
Before the break, we have one question that was on the chat line. Is that right, JVonD?
Yes, it was.
All right, so here's the question. Are you planning on opening more locations of Earth Treks? And I bet they're talking about Colorado, too.
Well, we always are looking. Always looking. Yeah.
That's a safe answer.
The problem with climbing gyms is that it's hard to find the right building, as you guys well know. I mean, you can go climb in a lot of buildings that are only 28 feet tall. It's just not that fun, right? So, yeah, you'd rather get height. And then you got to get parking, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot to finding a climbing gym.
Okay, we're going to take another break, and then we're going to bring in Kelly Cordes, and we're going to listen to a little bit of music from Ben WALBURN.
Give it up for Ben. Thanks for joining us, folks. folks. Welcome back to Climb Talk. Any boulders in the audience this evening? Anybody here boulder?
Yeah.
We have local bouldering pioneer Bob Horan in the house. He's graciously given one of his Colorado bouldering books, signed, autographed by him. Another one of our fabulous giveaways this evening. And thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Bob.
We have an audience question here. Phil Brozovic.
So I noticed when you did your show, your K2 show, you had a tendency to be able to handle the bodies and the carnage and the parts that you'd passed with levity. How long did it take you to pass frozen corpses before you could like dispel some of the stress with a joke about it?
Yeah, I actually remember the first frozen corpse I found. It was in Peru, and I was going out to scout the way up this peak and came around the corner, and there was this dead body, and it had been eaten by condors. So really, there was just a rib cage and different parts. And I went through every pocket the guy had and parts of his backpack, trying to identify who this person was. And there was no identification, which I learned after that. So when I would go to Everest, I'd say, you got to write your name on your mitten and on your chest. And that way, when you're dead, we can at least take your mitten off and say, we found, Joe or whatever it was. So anyway, but it was late in the afternoon when I found this dead guy. And I was by myself and eventually wandered back to camp. And it was like 6 o'clock at night. And my buddy was cooking up dinner. He's like, you hungry? I'm like, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be hungry because I just found this dead person. Like, aren't you supposed to be queasy and stuff? And it's like, actually, I'm really hungry. So, yeah, it didn't take that long, like an hour, I guess. But the problem on K2 is that, when people die on K2, they all get avalanched off. Nobody sits on a ledge like they do on Everest. Everest isn't very steep, right? So you sit there and you stay frozen forever. On K2, you get avalanched off, and then you land in the glacier, and then the glacier moves, and then it goes over like a steep cliff or something like that, and the parts of the glaciers pull apart. And if your arm goes this way and your leg goes that way, then it starts to move through, and as it goes through that grinding action, most of the flesh is generally stripped off, but you find bones all the time, like femurs and stuff. And I remember finding a boot, and it still had somebody's foot inside of it, right? So we took the foot out, and we buried the foot at the Goki Memorial and put the foot there. And
the name wasn't written on it?
No, it wasn't written on it, so it made it difficult. And then in 2007, we found a torso, and one of the guys in the expedition spent like 7 weeks, like a forensic CSI thing, trying to figure out whose torso this was. And we figured it was some some Western European, like French, Spanish, Italian, because there's a lot of neon on this torso. But we still never figured it out, So, yeah.
I'm going to start writing someone else's name inside my clothes so that if
it's
I
like
die, it won't
it's
really
like
be
summer.
me.
It's like summer camp, right? You just put your name. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. Man, I feel totally inferior with any stories that I have because, like, I don't have any gore. I mean, I just have a mullet and like a girl's name and a low IQ, Like, I don't got much else to bring to this. Like, man, it was like...
Yeah, but you have personal gore, don't you?
It was like...
you guys know who this is, right? This is Kelly Cordes. Patagonia's a writer, one of the great alpineers in America.
Thanks.
And he just, look at that. Glowing.
Yeah, man, but it was like listening to the audiobook version of Friday the 13th, dude. Man, I can't believe some of the stuff you've seen. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that as much as I can and until it's my time to go, and then I won't really care because I'll be gone. But
yeah, but know that death is there's not much things that we're fated for. Like, we're not fated to win the lottery, but I think we are fated for death. Because every one of us has 1,000 close calls, right? Just driving to here, someone was texting next to us and just by luck didn't hit us. So, we're all being saved for death. And maybe because we've seen so many crazy things, we're fated for really boring deaths.
Yeah, maybe, huh?
Yeah, like death by a Hallmark card or something.
Yeah, maybe I'll let you know after it happens to me how it worked out.
Yeah. I'm not sure we're going to the same place.
No, maybe not. I don't know. Dude, so when I was listening to what you were saying before, I had one question. Your parole officer took you climbing? Is that what you said?
Yeah, a parole officer and a gym teacher.
You want to explain that at all?
Well, he's from Massachusetts, if I can butt in here. We're all wicked, pissed, and we're just like angry, and don't get in front of us in the left lane.
Actually, New Jersey.
Oh,
and
well,
and
same
my
difference.
sister could beat up anybody from Massachusetts. She'll drive her Camaro up there. Yeah.
Nice.
Even the little Irish guys, are the ones you have to walk out. Those guys can throw it out.
My dad was from Dorchester, actually, right? So
Are you dodging the parole officer question?
you know, there's various
on this,
moments
dude.
in my life I'm not allowed to talk about. You know,
Okay.
like layovers in Bangkok, my youth, right? And what I claimed on my taxes yesterday. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
Right.
Let's take it to you now, real
yes.
quick.
I was trying to dodge the issue,
Yeah,
man.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now we're gonna start asking you questions.
Oh, shit.
You started climbing in Montana on ice, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, Montucky.
And you were Montucky,
Yeah.
and you were hooked, right?
Oh,
right
yeah.
away.
Oh,
talk about that.
Yeah.
I mean, you came
Man.
from like a competitive boxing background, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that transition.
Yeah, in a weird way, there were some similarities actually.
Really?
Well, with ice climbing, getting hit in the head, you know, like falling ice. Yeah, I know. It starts to explain a lot now as I'm like 43 years old and mumbling. But the boxing thing was super intense, obviously. I mean, you know, you step into a ring, you know, I mean, you can't step out of bounds. You can't call timeout. It's your skill against the other guy's skill. And the manifestation of that skill or lack thereof is you're getting your clock cleaned, you know? And so it's really intimidating. And so I think one of the things I learned from boxing was dealing with fear, you know? I mean, I always get scared. I mean, I call bullshit on any climber who says he's not scared. Or you know, maybe there are people out there like that. But it's the same with stepping in the ring. I mean, you learn to deal with intimidation, and you learn to deal with difficult situations. And you kind of learn how to deal with it when shit starts to hit the fan, you know? And that's, I think one of the things that actually is a huge parallel between boxing and climbing, at least alpine climbing. And it's kind of an obvious one, because you would say, well, what the hell do those two activities have in common? But there's quite a high degree of crossover. One of the problems, though, like whereas the boxing ring sounds pretty savage, right? I mean, you know, you get knocked out, you get hit in the head, whatever. But it's actually pretty tame compared to alpine climbing, and that's where I almost blew it, and I should have had my name written inside my clothes a bunch of times early on, because yeah, like my nickname was Sketchy Kelly when I started climbing, like for real, like it wasn't a joke, not, you know. I mean, people are like, man, don't go climb with that Sketchy Kelly dude. You know that short kid who's always excited to go climb with? Don't go climb with him. He's bad news. And I totally was, because like, so I took this this ambition that like had gained me success through just, you know, training hard and being mentally focused, being able to deal with intimidating situations, just the whole mental toughness thing, which is huge in boxing, but it's also crucial in alpine climbing. And the only difference, though, is that, like in boxing, if you get in over your head or whatever, the referee's going to stop the bout, you know, and you lose and you go home and you cry, if you're Spanish, I guess. No, I cried after I got beat in boxing. But then with alpine climbing, you get killed, you know. So that was kind of my problem. Was adjusting to that transition, and that's where the whole Sketchy Kelly thing came in, because I was just going for it all the time, like I was just like, oh, you know, a little determination, a little drive, yeah, I can do this, and give me the rack, dude. Like I remember arguing, like it was like my second day out ice climbing ever, and I'm climbing with a more experienced partner, and I want to lead the second pitch of this like water ice 4 route, which, I mean, that's not a very difficult grade in modern standards, but you know, when it's your second day out, you know, you're not going to be leading it, and certainly not whatever this was nearly 20 years ago. I'm like, come on, dude, no, let me lead. You know, I just like wouldn't shut up, you know, like finally he just like hands me the rack, and, you know, I like factor 2 onto the anchor. You know, I did all kinds of bad things. I nearly got killed so many times my first couple of years of climbing. And I think it was because, you know, I had this mentality that if you just push it, you know, you can kind of achieve, you know, close to what you want to achieve. But yeah, if you don't know how to build anchors, you don't know how to place pro, yeah, you probably shouldn't be leading. So those were some of the origins of the whole Sketchy Kelly nickname, and yeah, a couple of specific times where I nearly bit it, and yeah, I don't know. Nowadays, I think it's a joke. Like some of my friends call me Sketchy Kelly, and I think they're joking still. I hope so. I'm pretty sure. But
yeah, but I think you grew out of your sketchiness a little bit. So the question is, like, how do you grow out of that sketchiness for somebody obviously pushes the envelope like you? Is it like understanding your own mortality? Is it just more proficiency, or is it maturity?
Yeah.
How do you grapple out of that?
I don't know it, and I especially don't know that I've been accused of being mature ever.
Yeah,
and so
strike that from the record.
yeah, scratch that one. But I think maybe luck has played certainly a role. I mean, anybody who's been in the mountains a lot, has we've all gotten lucky if we're still here. There's no doubt about that. So I'm not going to try to make it sound like it was some great thing that I pulled off or whatever. But I also think there's an interesting kind of a shift or a relationship that goes on between pushing yourself a little bit farther than maybe what you're capable of, and then learning to deal with the consequences. Because each time you do that, and maybe it's small things, maybe it's just descending in the dark, maybe it's just like building an anchor when you got a shitty anchor and you got to try to figure things out, and I don't know that. You try to rappel down an unknown face or something, how you're going to figure all that out. Every time you deal with that, you get better able to deal with it the next time that it happens, right? However, every time you put yourself in that situation, you're exposed to the thing that might make it so that you don't come back, so that you don't get that opportunity. And perhaps somewhere in there is where some luck comes in, but I also think the mentality is just crucial to surviving difficult situations. So like keeping a cool head, thinking things through, not freaking out, and it's almost like training. Every time when you train to become, say, physically stronger, aerobically, strength-wise, whatever. And I've always been super serious about training. I'm not a gifted natural athlete. I work my ass off, and but every time you push it, you get a little bit better. And it's almost like epic training in a way, like, putting yourself into situations where you're not always bringing, I don't even know what the fucking 10 essentials are. Like, I couldn't even name them. I don't,
Anybody?
I don't know. I mean, duct tape, beer, Percocet, I don't, I don't even know.
iPad.
Yeah. But and not to necessarily endorse doing sketchy things. I mean, our society is such that it's kind of hard to like say this. I'm like, this is being streamed over the internet, right? So like some lawyer's gonna come after me and blame me for someone getting themselves killed or something. But I do think there's a value to pushing your comfort range. And sometimes I think ways you can do that, sometimes you learn to do things like, just simul climbing. You learn to go out climbing and try to bite off more than you can chew. You try to link up a bunch of routes in a day. You go for a big route with maybe you don't bring the kitchen sink. And you're just going to, if you're driven and you have an ego like I do and like all of us do, I mean, like anyone who goes out into the mountains and tries to achieve new routes for sure has an ego. I mean, you've got to deceive yourself a little bit. I mean, like I'm an expert at self-delusion. Like, man, the shit that I come up with from the comforts of base camp, like thinking that we can do this or that, oh yeah, no, we only need one fuel canister for that, dude. 5-day route, that was great Trango, yeah. And like, yeah, I mean, bringing like Gore-Tex sneakers with aluminum crampons because the white stuff up top, that's just got to be easy snow. We're like looking up like nearly 8,000 vertical feet, like making that judgment. But and so so some of those things are a little bit maybe indicative of the sketchy Kelly mentality. But I've also kind of learned to just deal with shit. When stuff goes wrong. Like I mean, I don't want to like curse myself, but I kind of think that I do an okay job of keeping a cool head in dangerous situations. And I think that's part of why, along with a healthy dose of luck, I'm still here.
You mentioned mental toughness. What is that? How do you get it? How do you develop it?
I don't really know. I think, man, I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist. I've seen a few of them, but I've given some of them my money, but the but I don't know how you develop it, or if it's something innate or what. I think for me, I think there were probably some things on the personal side of my life when I was younger that kind of developed this almost like obsessiveness. I'm just in terms of caring for people that I love and making sure that they stayed alive, and like in my high school years. And I think I sort of developed this like almost like obsessive thing, like almost like a nervous tick of like checking up on this person, my mother, and all the time to make sure she's still alive and all this. And it's kind of weird because then it starts to become this sort of thing, at least for me, that starts eating itself into my brain. That like, you got to go do this, you got to go do this. Don't just sit there. You got to go, check on her. And then like when I started boxing, it became this obsessive thing. Like I remember being in my dorm room in college, and it's like 2 a.m. or something, and I get up and like put on my sweats, and my roommate's like, dude, what are you doing? And I'm just like, nothing. And I go out and run around campus for an hour because like in the middle of the night I had this thought that my opponent for my next bout might be training right now, but then again he might not be. And either way, and if he's not, well, then I am because I want to whoop him. And if he's training and I'm not, then he might whoop me. So I'm gonna get my ass out and go for a run. Just like kind of weird little stuff that starts to work its way into your brain. It's a little bit obsessive sometimes.
You're talking about all this preparation though for boxing and caring for your loved ones, yet you tried to take the rack your second day on ice.
Yeah, I know it doesn't really add up, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Sometimes I think I try to prepare for the things that I can prepare for as best I can, and that's why I get so obsessive about training, for example, and why sometimes I can be really driven once we get on a route, and I oftentimes will keep pushing it. Although I get really scared beforehand, and then other times I get really excited, like when I first fell in love with ice climbing, and the second day out I'm trying to lead stuff and I'm whipping all over the place. Man, it's a little bit of a weird thing. I don't know. It's almost like this combination of sensibility and rationality when I'm thinking ahead and when I'm thinking sanely, like at home and deciding to work out or train or whatever. And then this delusional optimism that sometimes overtakes me when, say, I'm in base camp, or that, early in the sketchy Kelly days when I want to lead everything. But in a way, I think there is a fundamental underlying similarity, which is just drive and just a certain determination to try to do the things that you love to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mental toughness. What's your opinion on that, Chris?
I think we have to train it. We start out by exposing ourselves to little stresses, and we keep building up to bigger and bigger stresses. And that's something we transfer to every aspect of our life. That's why, hopefully we could take what we learned in the mountains and apply it to life back at home, as Willie Unsold told us was the true measure of success of any expedition. So I have a question. Absolutely. So I had a corner man. So in boxing, you have these corner men, who sit there with the champ. He told me, he said, every great champ I ever worked with went out in the ring on his back. So how do we go from being wannabes to has-beens? Like, what's the path that doesn't end in our, going out the wrong way?
No doubt. Man, I've thought of that a lot because, and what you said, actually, it's an interesting thing because boxers are notorious for not knowing when to quit, right? Like not knowing when to give up. I mean, it's really sad. You see a lot of these guys, they're punch drunk, they're beat up, and they're like, no, I'm going to get the title, or whatever, one more fight, next fight. And it's like, man, it's really sad, And I kind of think about that, too, with the climbing thing, like trying to gracefully ride off into the sunset or whatever. And, like, I always see those old people, you guys see, like, the 75-year-old people out there in the mountains sometimes. You don't see it as much here as you do in Europe, but, like, out there with their trekking poles,
Hey,
what
are you doing?
Man, it's just like the coolest thing. Like I've always thought that man, I want to end up like that, And so I think maybe there's something to like. It's almost like aging gracefully, which probably in my book has a lot to do with acceptance and knowing when it's time to, maybe accept the fact that, you know, you're not going to still be doing, you know, whatever, you know, K2 or Cerro Torre or whatever it might be. And how do you know when that is? And that's something that I'm dealing with a lot, because I've had so many injuries and surgeries. Like, you know, I mean, in a 13-month span recently, I had 6 surgeries. My last one was about a year ago, you know, knock on wood. So, you know, and like, I can't do what I used to do with my body. And I mean, it's really frustrating. And I like keep beating my head against the wall. And like, I went to Pakistan last summer thinking I was ready. And it's like, man, I think back on it, and I think all my friends and stuff were like, no, yeah, you just got to let them go, you know, like, yeah, like everyone. I mean, it was like a few months after my last surgery, you know, and like, man, but it's tough when you love something though, you know, because like, that's why I love being in the mountains. I mean, it's given me the greatest memories of my life, you know, and and climbing has been the singular thing I can always count on to make me happy, no matter what.
Oh, I can relate to that one.
You know, and yeah. So how do you deal with it when your mind is still looking for what you used to have and your body can't handle it? And I always knew that this would happen. Like, and I'm not saying that I'm done. I mean, I'm still early in the recovery process, and I'm, you know, doing relatively well. But damn it, I'm not where I want to be. But, you know, it's kind of weird, because we all know that there's going to be a day when we have to slow down, right? I mean, no matter how self-delusional we are. I mean, you know, well, except for like Jim Danini. God, he's still cranking. What's Danini? He's like 80 years old or something. I can't even keep up with him.
Fred Becky's rocking 87 or whatever.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. So you're always going to have a couple of outliers, right? but for the rest of it, it's like, even me, the king of self-delusion, I knew that one day I would have to slow down, and just that the wear and tear of the years would catch up, and I was planning on being like one of those guys who's like really psyched to go out and do, you know, 5-4 ridges in the mountains and stuff, and that's so cool. I think that's one of the best things about climbing, is that, you know, we can all get our fix at our own individual level, and if you adjust it right, meaning an internal adjustment, you can. My theory had gone that you can time that with your, you know, inevitable physical decline, and still get that feeling, still be happy, still be satisfied with what you did and what you're still doing. And the challenge, at least for me now, is just that, yeah, like I always knew that was going to happen, but I just never thought it would happen so soon. And, you know, and again, I'm not like writing myself off. I mean, I still have all kinds of self-delusional ambitions for the mountains, but like, damn, my body's quite a mess these days, and so I don't know how you deal with that. I mean, have you thought of that much? Like, what?
Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, I'm you know, 4 years older than you, and I just had hip surgery and all sorts of stuff. Yeah. But I think, you know, I'm glad that I've had all these other aspects of my life that I've developed. It's not just climbing. You know, I have a beautiful wife and awesome daughter, and I've got all these other things that test me. So, but I still have this piece of the mountaineering that I just can't give up. So, it was easy to make a transition from 6,000 new routes on 6,000 meter peaks to climbing 8,000 meter peaks. I've kind of given up the idea that I can actually pioneer a new route on an 8,000 meter peak.
Really?
But I've tried numerous times. I keep failing. So, you know, and gone are the days when I thought, like, I climbed the south face of Shishapangma in, you know, in 16 hours, you know. Until that jerk Uli Steck showed up, I had the record. You know? but you know, and I went, you know, from Kathmandu to the summit of Lhotse in 10 days. Now I'm like, oh my God, it's going to take me 70 days to get there. So I just, you know, you change what you do, but you still get the views, right?
Yeah,
so that's what we want. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think if yeah, so maybe it's just a shift in mindset. You know, it's just adaptation and dealing. And yeah, I guess for me, it's just. I'm maybe a slow learner and stubborn, which of course it has its benefits. I mean, you're mighty stubborn as well, it seems. You know, you mentioned that you don't do failure well, and I was kind of thinking, like, man, I actually do it really well. It's my specialty in life, man. Like, man, I fail all the time. But,
well, I feel all the time.
We're
I just
saying
don't
the
like
same
it.
thing, actually. Yeah. Exactly. So maybe it's just an adjustment as we get older and more beat up. But
one thing is, cold turkey doesn't work.
No,
so we're not doing that.
I've never tried. Well, I've only tried that when I've been in the hospital. You know, but yeah, that was kind of forced. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know.
That was Kelly Cordes. We have Chris Warner here at the Boulder Outlook, and this is Climb Talk, the road show. We're going to take a little break now. It's already 9:15. We're expecting to have Dave Graham and Chad Greedy. They're here.
Awesome.
And Will Lewandowski.
Nice.
We're going to take a little break with Ben WALBURN, and we'll be right back.
Thanks, everybody. You know, as climbers, I know y'all have large appetites. Someone's going to get lucky tonight. Our local Tsingtao restaurant has provided us with some Chinese food supreme. Thanks, everybody. Welcome back to Climb Talk, folks, with Dave McAllister and Mike Brooks. Give us a tune, Ben.
Okay, we're back at the Boulder Outlook. My name is Mike Brooks. Dave McAllister from PumpFactoryRoad.com is the co-host. And now we have Jason KEHL and Will LEVANDOWSKI here on the Climb Talk Road Show. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome, gents.
Thanks for having us, guys.
You are welcome. So, Jason, you're fresh back from Waco. The whole season, right?
Yeah, the whole season. 6 months, half the year, down in Waco, down in Texas. Super dusty. I'm super dusty.
Did you just get back, right?
Last night, yeah.
Woo! Welcome back, dude.
Yeah, thanks.
So how
it's
was
good
the
to be
season?
back. Season was awesome. Did a lot of guiding down there, a lot of exploring too. Found some really cool new lines. One of which I'm the most proud of is this new problem I put up called Count to 6 and Die.
What's that mean, Jason? Why'd you call it that?
You'll know when you see it.
Yeah, man.
I sent you the link, but you haven't seen
You
it.
keep on saying that.
Yeah, what is Count to 6?
I was gonna name it like Purple Flowers or something, but I didn't think it would, give the feeling of how I felt when I was climbing it. So
let me guess. It's a high ball.
Yeah, it's a high ball. It's not super high ball, but it kind of has a landing that follows it up. But off to one side, there's this huge drop, and so actually your spotter's in more danger than you are, because if you hit the spotter, they could, fall down this big slide to the left.
Just the way you like it.
Yeah. Had everything I was looking for, so.
Cool, man. So it was a good season.
Yeah, awesome.
Did you film the last Count to 6 and Die?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, I filmed it. I have a
Where
video
can people see it?
Up on debpointmagazine.com, and check it out. It's a different type of video for sure. So, as my videos usually are, but
yeah, right. Yeah. You've been putting up high balls now forever. It's evolution.
Yeah.
And on and on and on. What draws you to high ball climbing?
I kind of just got hooked on it because wherever I went, even to these established areas like Yosemite and Bishop, like the coolest looking lines are the lines that hadn't been done because they were too high. Mm-hmm. And therefore there was so many things to do. Like I like to do first ascents, and I just want to travel and find the purest line. And whenever I'd go out there, I'd see these huge walls with these amazing overhangs. I was like, this is the nicest thing here. And I had to try it. And I just tried and figure out a way to make it safe, or at least make it seem safe in my head.
Well, not to sound like a pussy, but after the guys that were just up here and sitting next to you, like, how do you deal with terror all the time and still wake up excited about it? Why aren't you like, screw this, I'm going to the jacuzzi?
It's not terror. It's how I learned to break down terror, and that's the process that I enjoy.
Cool.
It's not I'm, craving this fear. I'm craving this understanding of fear, So the more I can understand it, it's like calming to me.
Okay.
And when he really understands that he's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
Right? The first time I ever saw you, I think you were in a wheelchair.
He was in a wheelchair?
Yeah, at OR.
That was ACL surgery, and that was just me clowning around in a competition, and I landed on the pads wrong, but yeah, I think I do a lot of other things that are more dangerous, just every day. Like I feel like I'm gonna get hurt every day. I'm more scared every day that I'm gonna get hurt than when I'm out like trying something else, Yeah,
it's not good. So let's switch it over to Will here. Let's introduce Will LEVANDOWSKI. Was it last year?
Yeah.
The Will set the world record for most vertical feet climbed in 24 hours.
Yep.
And you climbed how many thousand feet?
29,000.
29,000 feet in 24 hours. And how monumental was this rock that you were on?
It was epic, dude. Let me tell you. No, it was 10 foot, 1 1/4 inch, 2,883 times.
Oh,
nice.
No. Talk about. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
So how many times did
Let that percolate here a little bit.
How many times did you-
2,883.
Whoa. And so how did you maintain your momentum? What was your drive? Weren't you doing it for a charity of sorts?
Yeah. Thanks for spoon feeding me that one. Yeah, it was for Operation Smile. Raised $3,600, and
Nice.
so yeah.
Woo. Nice.
It was for a good cause.
Yeah, but so I'm hoping this entire time, like I know that at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm gonna get a case of the Fuckets, and so I was really hoping that somebody was gonna say, "Hey, I'll pay you 10 cents for every vertical foot," and I could be like, "I'm doing it for the kids, man." But like my family all donates, like here's $10, and so like I have no motivation. I already have the money. Like I could just climb 20 feet and say screw it and go back home. But yeah.
Were you bleeding a lot at the end?
No, I got a couple gnarly blisters in my feet, but it actually wasn't that bad.
Blisters on your feet. Wow, I just got to think about that for a second. So describe where this was for everybody. I mean, it was right up there.
Yeah, like a mile and a half that way.
Yeah,
And
right.
so it's I don't know, maybe halfway up Flagstaff, actually in Crown Rock.
Mm-hmm.
Just some obscure little thing in a gully, and it just has a really, really short down climb.
So I remember when you were first thinking about doing this, he said, I wanted to get to 25,000 feet. Why in the name of baby Jesus did you do those last 4,000 feet? Like you reached your goal, you're at like 2,400 ascents of the same problem in a row.
Wow.
You thought, I'm going to plug away for 4,000 more feet.
The pizza hadn't come yet. I didn't really have anything else to do.
Oh, I didn't think Will would be funny.
Describe the 24 hours. Describe the beginning and the whole process, mentally and physically, that you went through.
Okay, so I start at 5 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. I think, I don't know, some midweek day, and start climbing. And after like an hour, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be boring. And people can come by, friends, people I don't really know, and so we're just sort of talking the entire time. Night comes, we flip on the headlamps. It's really not so bad. 11 o'clock rolls around. We get kicked out of the parking lot by OSMP, and I go home and ate 2 pounds of ravioli and like was still all like wired up. Didn't want to go to bed. The alarm clock goes off at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just like, oh no, not again. And my wife rolls over and just goes, and elbows me. So, yeah, I think I hit the 25,000, which was what I had to do for the record, at like 2:30 in the afternoon. Sat down, looked at my feet, and it was like really one big ass blister that was like pretty much my whole right foot. I drained that and went to put my climbing shoe back on. And I really was just like, no, man, no more, 3 more hours. And we had already called somebody to bring beer and pizza, so we were waiting for him anyway. So just started up again. 3 hours later, got to drink that beer and eat that pizza. So
God,
that's basically
good for
it.
you, dude. That must have been the tastiest beer you've ever had in your life.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
And so you were doing this for a Guinness World Record as well.
Yeah.
So were there witnesses there? People accounting?
Yeah.
I mean,
so
somebody with a golf clicker or something like that. Clicking
Yeah.
off
So
the...
I hired a nice usher. We duded him up. He had a bow tie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. A little monocle like Mr. Peanut.
I mean, how did you prove it?
I had to videotape the entire damn thing. It was so annoying. So I also went to Best Buy and got a little camcorder and set that up, recorded 24 hours, clogged my computer with 24 hours of continuous video.
Oh my God, it's like an Andy Warhol piece. You should show that at the Boulder Theater sometime.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Just give everybody a tab of acid and be like, you guys are going to love this, man.
Yeah.
So what's next here? Any more feats
Dave,
of...
that was my question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Any more feats of daring do?
I kind of want a PhD.
Oh, yeah. Did you know that? Will's in his dissertation for a PhD right now.
Oh,
Yeah, so my advisor was not too pleased when he found out about all this.
It was only one day, though, man. It was 24 hours. Like,
Yeah,
come
so
on.
his proposal was that when I finished, I could, do 24 hours of grant writing or something.
Yeah, right. So you're still climbing a ton, though. You just had surgery, but before the surgery, you were climbing a ton, right?
Yeah.
Your wife said 5 hours a day. How does a PhD student in his dissertation find 5 hours a day to climb?
Why do you think my advisor was pissed when I took off 24 hours straight?
Indeed. No, but really, how do you manage that? How do you manage that time? Or it's just those are the only things you do?
I like to cook dinner too, but yeah, that's about it.
That's good.
Yeah.
No.
To be serious, so like, I mean, what the hell do you do for 24 hours a day? Like,
masturbate and climb talk show. That is
Oh,
it,
okay.
man. That is it. You seen the size of these?
Hey,
Sorry.
what's up?
That's only partly true.
No. I mean, I remember I used to run a lot in college, and people ask me like, "You run every day? How do you find time to do that every day?" And I'm like, "You can't find a freaking hour? Like, come on."
That's true. That's a good point.
And we live here in Boulder, so it's
right out your front door.
10-minute detour.
Okay, that was madness. Let's take her back to Jason. I had a question for Jason. You got a question for Jason?
Jason KEHL and Will Lewandowski here on the Climb Talk radio show at the Boulder Outlook. Jason, we were talking to your ex-boss, old boss, Chris Warner. He said that you couldn't climb 5'6", or you couldn't set a 5'6".
Oh, I couldn't set a 5'6".
Couldn't
I had
set.
this warped perception of grades. I think I still do. That's why I try not to grade anything.
That's right. So do you still have that problem? You don't like the grade?
Yeah, I just don't like. When I think about climbing and what I want to climb, it's not how hard it is.
It's not about the grade.
Yeah, and
it's about the line.
It just takes away from it for me, you know.
Sure. You're up, Dave.
I'm up. Well, wonderful segue here. Speaking of grades, there was a 10-year-old in Waco climbing V13.
Yes.
While you're
Shima
out there.
is her name. She's from New York City. She's amazing, bouldering prodigy, mutant ninja warrior princess, crazy.
So, Ashima, what's her last name?
Sarishi.
Sarishi, okay.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
I was just kind of out there guiding her with my good friend Obi Carrion. He's her coach, and they come out every year and just kind of show them around. And it's really surprising what a 10-year-old can do.
No, I mean that's ridiculous. Like
V13 and has not had an ascent by a female ever. Like she's the first female ascent and the youngest.
And like the 4th or 5th woman in the world to climb that grade.
Yeah.
And she's 10 years old.
She's 10 years old, and she's like this tall, and she likes cookies and.
Yeah, the Cookie Monster and teddy bears and whatever.
Don't steal her cookies.
So how does she do it, Jason?
Natural talent. She just feels it, and everyone's like, oh, small hands, they can do anything. They're light,
Sure.
but if that was the case, then everyone with small hands would be climbing, V13. It's not the case, I think she has a lot of talent, and I think she knows what she wants, and I think she's so young that she's just learning now more what she wants and how to deal with it. And she tried a lot of hard projects this year, and it was interesting to see how a 10-year-old dealt with failure. It's a lot different than we deal with failure.
How was it? How did she deal with failure?
Good, but like each year I see her, she's progressed a lot more. Like last year I remember her, getting upset over, not succeeding, and this year it's a little less. And I mean, if you're at 10 and you fall off the top move of a V13, what are you gonna do?
I don't cry like a Spanish person.
Yeah.
But okay,
we were trying to get her to get pissed and like get aggressive, but she doesn't understand that at all.
I think that's child abuse, man. Really.
We're like, come on, don't you get mad?
Get angry, you 10-year-old.
That's how the stealing cookies came into play. We told her we stole her cookies, and then she was like,
oh right,
going at the wall.
So we talked about how I'm fascinated by this, how a 10-year-old deals with failure, but you said she's progressing, and I would kind of think it's a meteoric progression.
Oh yeah.
Through difficulty. How does she handle that, or does she have any idea what she's achieving or accomplishing for herself?
I don't think she really understands like the whole scope of it, but as far as for herself, she also knows that she's growing each year, and she grew like 4 inches since last year, and she had all these projects she was trying, and she was like, well, I'm 4 inches longer this year. I can reach the move this year. I'm like, are you going to grow next year? Like, she's always changing, so that's interesting to see too. And I think she has hope because she's not finished, like.
Yeah, it's incredible. I wish I was still growing 4 inches every year. You're actually shrinking a couple inches every year.
I thought so.
Thanks for pointing that out, Dave. Yeah.
No problem.
I think it's the
At least
hat.
it's not live radio. Thanks for that, Dave.
You're welcome.
Okay, this is the Climb Talk Road Show here at the Boulder Outlook. We're talking to Jason KEHL and Will Lewandowski. Thank you for joining us on the show. And do you want to take a break now, or what do you think, Dave?
Maybe one more question and then take a break?
Go ahead.
For both of you guys, what's up for the summer? I know you travel constantly. I want to know what your plans are. And you just had surgery, Will. So
Yeah.
what are your plans for the summer? You rehabbing?
Yeah, I got 6 or 8 weeks left, and then I can get back.
What happened?
I don't know.
Climbing?
I don't know, actually. I just started to get really weak and got an MRI, and then was under the knife 2 weeks later.
What exactly?
So I had a torn labrum, so they just anchored it back down, but it should be good as new.
That's a good injury to have for a climber. Those surgeries go well normally.
I hope so. But yeah, so
what I've heard.
So yeah,
I don't know anything about it, actually.
So yeah, 6 or 8 weeks, and we're planning on going to Europe for a couple weeks, not to climb, just to bum around.
Congratulations to you and your new wife as well. You
Thanks,
guys
man.
just got married a year ago, so.
Yeah.
All right, Jason, what's around the bend for you?
I got my stuff in storage back in the van. Year of the Renegade, Volume 2. Be on the lookout for it. Squamish, Joe's Valley.
Oh, cool.
I'm just going to be traveling.
All states, in all North America.
Yeah. Maybe go to Europe in the fall.
Cool. Do you have any particular projects, places you're really dying to get to?
Slovenia, Macedonia, and back to Spain.
Sweet. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Tough schedule.
We'll be right back.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Climb Talk on the road. If you want to know more or hear old episodes of the program, check out climbtalk.com. And anyone in here who would like to release their inner hippie, we got some Boulder granola to give away this evening. Some of the dankest granola in town. folks, welcome back to Climb Talk. I want to give a real big thank you to the Boulder Outlook Hotel for letting us come in here and utilize this space. Big thanks to the wait staff for taking care of us, alcoholics. And one other thank you to Sharpen Publishing. They're giving us 2 $20 gift certificates to new books of your choice, as I believe. And welcome back, folks. Dave McAllister, Michael Francis Brooks.
Yeah. Okay, we're back here on Climb Talk at the Boulder Outlook Hotel, and thank you for joining us. And on the show, we have legendary climbers Dave Graham and Chad Greedy. Thank you for joining us.
Give it up! Give it up!
Thanks for having us.
Can you guys get on those mics a little bit?
I can't deal with these headphones.
I'm on.
Man. What's up?
Oh, you don't need to wear those.
Thank God. All right.
That's just for
Sorry.
show.
I was super confused by that. That was like a big,
I'm gonna keep mine on.
big problem so far. All right. Everything's cool now. Hi. Felt like I was like sitting in another room. It's really weird.
Okay, Dave and Chad, what's happening now? Dave, I understand you were working at Daniel Wood's project up in the hills. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Failed again today.
What
Another day. Another day of failure.
Really?
Another day of attempts. Kind of a bummer for me.
Really
I didn't
bad
get to eat dinner
conditions
either.
today in the
Came
park.
back, got a couple beers so far, having a good time, but didn't climb the problem, so everything's not okay. You know what I mean? Close. Cut my fingers. Almost did it, but it's frustrating. It's like day 8. Daniel Wood's problems are hard. Everybody should try them and see what they're like. They're hard.
How many moves on this particular
This
problem?
problem's like 6 hard moves, essentially.
Oh. Mhm.
So that's a major issue, considering that the problem's it's like 11 feet long or something like that. And
Really?
if you're going to fall, you're going to fall on one of those 6 moves. And it's easier to fall on problems when there's more moves. When there's only 6, you're kind of eventually wondering why you can't seem to do 6 moves in a row. But then, you realize at the end of every session why. Because you can't.
6 really
it's pretty
hard
simple.
moves.
You just fail miserably, and you're like, wow, I just can't do 6 moves in a row. So, yeah, working Painted Black, Daniel's new problem, pretty sick.
At Elkland, right?
No,
Or
not
Nikki's-
Elkland. In Rocky Mountain National Park, in the forest itself, by Veritas.
Oh,
Exactly.
right on.
You drive on the road and you find like a
Mhm.
circular parking, and you get involved, park your car, hike across the river, 2 minutes, you're at a roof,
And that's
6
it.
moves, and then a top out, and then that's it.
And then the glory.
Yeah.
So we brought up
really steep roof though.
What's
It's
that?
super steep.
It's really steep.
You need to talk into your mic, dude. Talk
It's
into
really
the mic.
steep. Steep roof.
Get on that mic,
It's
Chad.
65 degrees. 65-degree roof, as Daniel Woods quoted. Sick. 65-degree roof.
Sick.
Yeah.
So you guys have spent some time this year, at the end of last year, at Elkland or Nikki's Boulders or the Billards or what's that
Yep.
place called actually?
Well, I'm going to let Chad talk about this because he's into Elkland more than anyone, I think.
Elkland,
I think
you put up-
Elkland is probably Chad's favorite place these days. So
what's going
who
on?
better
What
to
do-
ask than an
It's just
Elkland
another-
advocate like him?
It's a roadside bouldering area in Estes. It's just right behind the Stanley. Right behind the Stanley.
Really?
It's not exactly behind the Stanley. You have to drive down the road a while, and then above Nikki's restaurant.
1.1 miles.
Holy crap.
You'll find
Yeah.
just a whole bunch of boulders in Estes Park. And since there's all these elk everywhere in Estes, we called it Elkland. It's just more or less like the backyards of every people's domiciles in Estes. But we haven't gone in their backyards yet. We're kind of on the exteriors of their backyards.
Take your time.
Just looking for boulders. And that's Elkland. So if anybody's wondering what the mystery is, Nikki's Boulders, old school area, Adam Strong, Jim Belser, all these other guys used to climb at above the Nikki's
And
restaurant.
Tommy Caldwell.
Yeah, Tommy Caldwell too, legend. And thus we kind of went there as well, climbed a bunch of things, and then found all these other boulders that are in between all the people's backyards.
Tommy's
That's
parents
Elkland.
actually live there. Tommy's parents' house is actually at the outskirts of the bouldering area as well.
It's true.
So we got to
Chad-
park at his house.
Chad parked there once.
Fantastic.
I wasn't here, so I didn't park there, but I saw Tommy up there, which was really fun.
Yeah.
And he seemed pretty impressed. So I guess like say if we're talking about Elkland, I guess I'll mention some things because there isn't so much development in Colorado, right? We don't have like constant development of bouldering areas. There's 4 climbing gyms or whatever in Boulder. That kind of, you know, subtracts from people going outside and developing stuff. So everybody kind of like sometimes goes in the climbing gym, especially a lot of the young crowd. You know, they'll just be in the gym, not out bouldering and developing stuff. But you know, Elkland got developed a lot by just Chad, just with a saw and whatever, you know, cutting some branches down and moving some sticks and a brush, and that's that. I guess that's the irony right here is that Elkland's just kind of the Estes Park. Actually, it's not even like you hike very far, but it's been developed recently. And that's the fascinating thing is that why hasn't it received more attention? It's kind of like an outdoor climbing park in Estes.
And
I mean, the government could make money off of it if they wanted to like box it off.
It actually is in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Pretty easy for them, you know. They
No
just
dogs.
charge. Yeah. So whatever.
I think Jamie Emerson brought this up, but I thought it was interesting, and you just noted on it as well. The last time, or a while ago when you guys were at Elkland developing, there were like 6 of you, and there was 1 person under 30 years old. So that leads me to believe the development is going on by kind of like an older crew.
Older folks.
So the fogies.
Like us.
That's not true at all.
Old people.
I'm just, yeah,
It's not true in the least bit.
Okay.
I mean, like, Daniel's there, Courtney's there, like,
Yeah.
John Gass is there. Those guys aren't 30.
There's youngins, even Michael O'Rourke. He's been with us.
Yeah, he's like 17
yeah,
years
he's
old.
like 16 or 17.
Wow.
Little kids.
I think
There's
it's been like
youngins.
an array of people.
Cool.
From Adam Strong, 40 years old, this last Friday, to Michael O'Rourke, you know, Isabel, 17, 18-year-old kids.
Mm-hmm. Isabel.
It's just a
Isabel
great place
Faust.
to climb. Absolutely great place to climb. You know what I mean? It's just like fun for the whole family. My brother brought his like week-old kid there the other day. It's pretty cool.
From a European standpoint, it's ridiculous that they haven't made it more accessible to people. And Estes Park, as like the tourism board, hasn't acknowledged that that's something that's like fun for the family, and you know, put our tax dollars to use and made something useful out of that area. Instead, it's just kind of like
And
no
it's a
man's
great
land.
alternative to go. You just park on the road, you walk up. We've talked to the rangers. It's totally cool. And like the park right now is under construction, so it's like you have to wait at a stoplight in the middle of the Rocky Mountain National Park and go down dirt roads, and it's like super major hassle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, our country has a long way to go in terms of, you know, treating the rock climbing parks in our country properly. But in France, for instance, this place would be big time, you know.
Why that
popular.
dichotomy? Why that? I mean, you've been to Europe.
It's just
you
not
spent a lot of
embedded into
time.
our culture. Like, even though Rocky Mountain Park is right there, we still have to drive through the rangers, you know, threshold every single day and get the "Do you want a map?" question, and you're just like, dude, I've seen you for the last 12 years, every single. Like, I don't even know how many times I've gone into the park, but seen you specifically, Ranger Dude. You know, we know your name, like Bob or whatever. He offers us a map, and it's just like, man, in France, like, at least he would say, hey, man, how are you? Back to climb? In America, it's like, sir, do you want a map? Sir, do you have your pass? Do you have your ID? And that's just kind of like the thing I'm noticing these days, is that in Estes Park, where, you know, what we see right now happening, the whole park's getting the road widened again. And they're putting all this money to use to make more accessibility to the, you know, upper parking lots or whatever by ripping the road apart and building it bigger.
And new parking lots. They're putting in new parking lots too.
Pissed.
People will understand. People will realize, you know, there's like 2 V14s there. There's like really hard problems. There's a handful. There's like a dozen of like pretty hard to moderate problems, and then there's a ton of moderates. You know what I mean? It's going to be, you know, in 3 years or something, everybody will be up there.
Like here or here? What's the deal?
Here, there, man.
Right there. So I gotta like get all up in its grill and shit.
Yeah. So what would your solutions be?
Can we turn it up? Get like more.
Get some reverb and feedback going.
I don't think.
What would you offer for solutions to make it more climbing friendly? Or
We just need to like represent ourselves potentially as like a giant community, maybe more so in our country, and start making people understand that our culture is to climb, and that culture means it's part of our rights. Like baseball is our culture, you know. It's like our right to play baseball in some park, but at the same time in Rocky Mountain National Park, if you like left your baseballs or your baseball bats there, you know, the rangers would pick them up and lock them up at the ranger station. You got to go get the, you know, your baseballs and your baseball bats from the ranger station, and you're like, dude, we're Americans, you know. We need our tools to function. Instead, they're taking our crash pads or whatever. If you ever leave anything overnight, that's not good. It's good as gone. But this is like, you know, just Estes Park. But it's still the government property, so we can't bring dogs up there. So we're victim of certain laws, except they're not like, you know, giving us anything back, and they're our government, and I think that's kind of fair. And the only reason I'm saying this lately is because of the elections and stuff, and everybody's talking about like what's important. But honestly, I think that maybe if we were to think about something important in the community around here, I'm not even from Colorado, I'm from Maine, but I'd say like let's integrate, you know, the government of Colorado into the climbing scene.
He's talking about the Netherlands elections that are coming up.
Sure. Big time.
They actually are.
But no, I'm serious. I mean, like the whole point I'm trying to make is that like climbers could get a little bit more space to do what we're doing, and we wouldn't have to, you know, fend for ourselves so much and explain where everything is so much as well. It's like Elkland is just, we just called Estes Park bouldering Elkland. You want to like go anywhere in Estes Park, it's probably going to get called Elkland. A lot of elk. You know, call things by the names of what's obvious. Elkland. Easy to say like this, but like at the same time, if it was some like established place, you know, everybody would just totally think it's normal.
So how do climbers foster? We interviewed John Sherman, you remember that, and he was talking about how he almost thought climbers should form a union so they could talk to the forestry services. And
yeah, I'm down with that idea.
What else? How else can climbers get their voices heard?
Need to use the system the way the system's built.
Do the opposite. Go extremely underground, be really secretive, like not be seen. You know what I mean? Like do everything ninja tactics. You know what I mean? Like it's like
it's a different approach.
It's like we were talking about today. It's like people bitched and moaned about the tree behind Whispers of Wisdom for years and years and years until it got like hacked down with a screwdriver or something. It's like somebody to cut the tree down like 5 years prior. It's like it's not a big deal. The tree's going to go down. You know what I mean? It's a tree.
And when they widen the road, it's really frustrating to think about how we can't cut down one tree.
Some things when they're of
and they're just destroying trees and stacking them in these little piles to burn, so everybody can see them burn. You know, it's like I've watched those piles, you know, next to the road for 6 months now, and they've burned some of them, but it's a bunch of dead trees waiting to get burned. It's kind of rugged.
The beetle
like
kill and all that
a lot of respect,
stuff,
you know, for the everything. Beetle kill / widen the road. You know, bummer. Anyway, as a boulderer, this is the kind of stuff I think about these days. The elections and all is just kind of like what it's like to be an American and be a boulderer. Because I travel abroad a lot and I see all the rights those Europeans have, and hell, I come back here and I'm just like, wow, things aren't the same, are they?
Things are pretty good though, you know.
Pretty good.
I think so.
We can go out and go bouldering every single day and develop areas and chop down trees actually, and you know we're just out there by ourselves usually, you know.
I think Adam Strong has a company that chops down trees in Estes Park, and he's our friend. So it seems pretty cool. Chop down trees. I mean,
that's
whatever.
the coolest thing ever.
I saw a bunch of trees blow down.
It's a really good
for
time
the
in
windstorms.
Colorado bouldering. You know, there's a lot of creative people, a lot of strong people coming out of Boulder that are developing areas and putting up really hard problems that are going to be noteworthy for years to come. And that's awesome, you know.
I totally agree with that. I mean, you guys are kind of at the forefront of that. It's both of you.
The tree stuff and the government stuff's a tangent for sure. Just taking us down the route for the fun of it. Mike told me on the phone we can talk about whatever we want, so I've just been trying to take advantage of that. You know.
Take it, man. You're going to be heard.
For the questionnaire.
No, but it is really true because it's like, you know, there's rock all over the states, and it's like you don't see people from California or even people from Utah for that matter, like that have a bunch of rock. Like I haven't really seen a new bouldering area come out of Utah in a little bit, and like
they're all
or
secret.
California or anything.
We just think about like the last 2 or 3 years. There's Wolverine Land or Lincoln Lakes. There's Endo Valley. There's Elk Land. There's all of the new problems that went in the previous 5 years to chaos, and that's kind of like a golden age for Colorado bouldering right now.
We have a lot of rock in this state. California?
Heli bouldering. Heli bouldering is the next
been heli
frontier.
bouldering.
We just need to make more money in this industry, so we need to grow the industry to support more money, and then we can heli boulder. Simple.
I think we have a question from the audience. Can you take care of that, Cor?
Can we? Well, we've been heli skiing. Heli bouldering is always an option out there. There's actually a company out of Boulder.
I'm pretty sure that's Bob Brand in the back, and he's asking us about heli bouldering.
Never mind.
I'm pretty sure the deal is that if you're sponsored by Red Bull, you can heli boulder. Because check this out. If anybody wants a story, here's a little story. This is like what it's like to be a professional rock climber. It's kind of absurd, but this is the kind of things that get thrown in my little circuits of communication. So I get a proposal to film with some guys, some famous climbers from Austria, Kilian Fischhuber on a store, right? Chuck Freiberger. And he wanted to do some heli bouldering. And previous to that, I had been talking about doing some heli bouldering in the Wind Rivers and asking questions to my friends. You know, I couldn't afford to do it, but at the same time, I wanted to. Then I get this call about how these guys, these Austrians, are going heli bouldering and how they want me to go take them heli bouldering somewhere where I've been looking to go heli boulder. And I was kind of pissed. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go heli bouldering with the Red Bull crew because that's Red Bull and that's Austria and that's like their form of dominance to our whole entire community these days.
We can't
it's like we've got the money,
helicopters.
you don't.
Yeah.
You want to roll with us, and you're like, nah, man, we'll be poor and not heli boulder, but we're not rolling with these Red Bull weirdos. Like, you know, I don't drink Red Bull and I don't condone it, and I'm not sponsored by them, and I'm sure as hell not going to take some Red Bull athletes heli bouldering unless going heli bouldering like for real with my bros, like doing a real heli bouldering sesh. You know what I mean? Let's just remember that. So that's the heli bouldering question.
And there's really no need to go heli bouldering when there's things roadside about everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's roadside boulders in Estes.
Rent an
Like,
Audi
why?
or something and like.
Why run a helicopter? You want to take our last break?
Is it time
Take
for
a break.
It's been 17 minutes. Let's
Okay,
take
we're gonna
one
take
more.
a little break now. Back to Ben WALBURN.
Oh, not again.
Climb Talk on the road.
Let's get some drinks up here. He's got me a drink.
We got one more segment left.
Thanks, everybody. We're back at Climb Talk Radio, live on the road, Boulder Outlook Hotel. We have giveaways at the end of the show. If you didn't put your name on a coaster at the bar, fill it out, give it to the bar, give it to me, and we'll have our giveaways at the end of the show. Thanks again, everybody here. Back to Mike Francis Brooks and Dave McAllister.
Get your posture going on.
Okay, we're back here on the Climb Talk Road Show here at the Boulder Outlook Hotel, and we want to thank the Boulder Outlook Hotel for hosting our gig tonight, and thank you for joining us on Climb Talk. My name is Mike Brooks. Dave McAllister is the co-host as usual, and we have Dave Graham and Chad Greedy as guests tonight, our final guests of the evening. We don't really have much time, and so we're going to start kind of spicing it up a little bit. We're going to get a little controversial.
Controversy. People are going to get pissed on the internet. Like, big time. I know who. Let's get this going on.
Jamie Emerson.
All right, Jamie Emerson.
Jamie Emerson is for the local climbers, and everyone knows who he is and what he does and what he's all about, and he's mentioning chipping, bouldering. But people are putting in routes at Rifle or chipping. What's that all about? What's your opinion on that, Dave?
What is that all about?
Yeah, they're just
So,
chipping the loose stuff.
For years, people have maintained that bouldering on the Front Range is not chaussy. And this is a huge, like, misconception for everybody. You know, alpine or, you know, lowland, whatever. There's a lot of choss. It's not just Rifle, it's chaussy. One thing that's different about the Front Range is you can't use glue. What's up with that? Everybody in Rifle uses glue. So I guess the big question is why is there a double standard in Colorado divided by this Front Range and this West, whatever what Colorado people call it?
So that doesn't make any sense, does it?
No, it makes
you
no
can
sense.
do it in Rifle.
What do you call it, the Western Slope?
Western Slope.
All right, all right. As a Mainer, it's like a little bit abstract for me. This Western Slope, Front Range, it's like whatever. What about the flatlands and flatlands and the basin?
Different ethics and different kind of things, you know. It's like sport climbing.
Get on your mic, dude.
Get on that mic, Chad.
It's off, I think. I didn't touch it. But whatever. Anyway.
His mic's off. Whatever. Anyway,
All
yeah,
right,
I guess
back
this is a
on.
great hypocrisy of Colorado these days for, you know, people that aren't like born here and have been used to it for a really long time. It says, why the hell is it okay to chip a bunch of holds in Rifle and it's not okay to even like clean new boulder problems without getting shit written about you on the internet? Let's think about that. Let's get into it. Like, anybody?
What's the difference between cleaning and chipping?
There's a huge difference. I mean, I guess like we're going to look at it from a comparative point as Rifle to the Front Range. Like in Rifle, it's okay to take crowbar up and rip off all the choss, and then for cleaning's sake, you know, use about like a kilo of Cicadur or even worse, like some PC7, like the wrong glue, and reinforce everything so everything stays on the wall. You know, I guess that's an irony too, because all the routes in Rifle are usually pretty mid-range, you know, 513 or something like that. Why not glue the holds on and rip them off so there's some harder terrain? I guess it's weird to think that like you're reinforcing a route, you know, and making it clean at the same time when in reality you're just keeping it a certain level as opposed to ripping every single piece of thing off of it and making it impossible. So it's like, as boulder developers, we were talking about Elkland earlier. I guess I think it's a relevant thing is because we're talking about development Colorado, like we're talking about this idea. It's available to everybody, and there's obviously these ethical lines that you can't cross. You can't like go and bring a drill out. You can't bring a drill out and, you know, drill some 2-finger pockets out some blank boulder, but you're allowed to do that at the Wicked Cave and Rifle. And that's
Or the
right there.
Sex
That's
Cave
something
in
that's
Clear Creek
important.
Canyon, for that matter. You
For
know
sure,
where it
or
is,
the
where it does get
Barrio,
done.
or a bunch of places. So it's like, why is Etchelet considered to be a classic historic problem versus St. Daniel Woods manufactured boulder problem? Why is that compared with every other boulder that's out there? And why do people get ostracized and or, you know, called out on the internet, for instance, for cleaning boulder problems up at a place like Lincoln Lake where there's some like exfoliation and stuff? So yeah, I guess there's all these like fine lines and everybody wants to get into it, but when's somebody going to bring it up and talk about it? Maybe this is a good chance, you know, to at least stir the pot a little bit, you know?
Don't you
get
think it's a
people
I think it's a misconception as well. People hear chipping or cleaning, and they have the anonymity of the internet to stand behind, and maybe they've never. I mean, there are very few climbers who get to ever put up a first descent, relatively speaking. So maybe they
That's
don't.
a shame, you know. I mean,
it's total
like,
shame,
it's
but
like-
they don't understand maybe the process that goes in
Yeah.
to setting up a piece of rock to be climbed. The
Lots
cleaning.
of rocks, from a developer's perspective, lots of rocks got a lot of stuff that breaks off. You walk up to
Absolutely.
a dirty rock and it's got moss, it's got like flakes of rock, it's got all this shit all over it. And I mean, I guess you can, walk around the world and look for these like pristine, perfect things that are clean by nature, that are 100%, badass. But hell, I mean,
Those don't
you're not going to
exist.
spend your time bouldering that much.
And the
You're just
fact of
going
the
to
matter,
be
it's like
climbing on
traffic.
a choice
It's
pick
like-
of boulders. It's like, if you want to boulder all the time, you need to kind of like get into it, get after it, and start realizing that rock's dirty and it needs to get cleaned, and wire brushes and, big plates help get
I mean,
moss
there used
off
to be
and rock and-
situations where people got ostracized for using wire brushes. You know what I mean? If you used a wire brush at a certain area or something, it was like, big
Bolting's
no-no,
not okay
you know?
sometimes, So I guess maybe we should ask ourselves as climbers, like, what's up with all this weird-ass hypocrisy? And, like, why is one thing okay and why is something else all right? And what's up with all these double standards? Because it makes no
Yeah,
sense.
just in the same-
From an internal
So
perspective.
it's all just climbing. You know what I mean? It's just.
It's like, why are knee pads not allowed? Or shoes are.
Yeah.
Chalk bags are cool, but, like, can't wear a knee pad. It's like everybody wears knee pad and rifle, but, like, bring a knee pad down to, like, some other area, everybody's like, dude, I don't wear knee pads. And you're like, all right, bro, you don't wear knee pads. Cool as shit, huh? So the deal is, like, why is everybody so into their shit in the United States? In France, dude, you wear a knee pad, man, everybody's gonna be like, hey, we are. Say some French stuff, and they're not going to really, like, make a big ordeal out of it because they've been through that. In our country, we're just starting to deal with all these problems, like, straight up right now, I guess.
And it's just weird. Different people go out and do different things, in their surroundings or whatever, and then some people like say, "Hey, that's not cool that you do it this way or something." But it's like, it's just cleaning a boulder. It's
like, are we allowed to build landings or not? It's like
A lot of
there's
people have
another
problems with
question,
everything,
Front
you know what I
range
mean? But
issue.
it's
You get for trying to build a landing on a pre-existing problem. Now, who's to say that you can't change a landing on a pre-existing problem? Who's to say that? Like, how does this all break down?
Who does say that though?
People.
Really?
Yeah, the people on
for
the
sure.
internet.
Not just on the internet, people to my face. Like, I've seen landings that have been built dismantled.
Yeah, that too.
Talk
you know
about
what I mean?
that. Where's the righteousness? Where is all this weird pride coming from is my question. And why is it happening in Colorado? Like, why are people drilling routes and rifle and
I
then
think
people
more
writing
people
blog
need to read
posts
Peter
on the-
Beale's book
the
on
Front Range?
bouldering and bouldering ethics and stuff, and it just kind of sets the standard to like what people are capable of and what people can like. It's just kind of a collaboration, you know what I mean? It's like people have the wrong idea sometimes about like the things that go on and stuff, and then they talk about it and stuff, and it's usually on the internet where they're just sitting behind kind of like
Great
closed
platform
doors.
to hear what people are thinking, the internet, So,
Yeah.
These days. Anyway, just an observation, from my side. I'm sure Chad too.
Yeah, my side.
It's like, what's up with that for Colorado? What about some unification on some theories and some concepts? Like, when's it going to be a little bit more
People love to make these groups
Whatever.
like the North Colorado Coalition for Climbing and like all these groups and stuff. But it's like when it comes down to it, it's like people go out and just go have a good time and explore in the outdoors and like have a good time and like it's kind of
There should be a home for
Fun
bouldering,
gets lost a lot of
bouldering and
times.
mountaineering in Colorado. Alpinism, sport
Alpinism
climbing,
as well.
bouldering. But there shouldn't be petty conflict and, just straight up illogic. So I guess it's like we're all of the community. We should just try to like spearhead that operation and just talk about it more.
unify more genres of climbing. I mean, we were out climbing the other day with Hayden Kennedy, Matt Siegel, like Josh Wharton, all these like alpinists, trad climbers. We're bouldering, like, Dave, he's a sport climber, like whatever.
sport
And
climber.
it's just like all these great groups meshing into one another, that's just like, this is climbing. All we're doing out here is climbing. Those guys take it maybe a little bit differently than we take it. We take it a little bit different than they, whatever. But it's just rock climbing. It's movement on rock. You know what I mean? There's not anything else to say. It's just like, oh wow, you did that move. Maybe you didn't do that move.
Should have a little unification.
We need
Little
more
bit of
shows like
unification.
this.
Yeah.
Colorado, unite.
hippie love that's going around this room. I just feel it like
Yes,
in my
hippie
heart,
climbers.
my soul.
We recently moved to Netherlands. I don't know if it's anything to do with like our attitudes have changed or anything like that, but
But we
whatever.
do
It's
worship
just all
the
about,
hawk,
you know,
and that's like kind of
appreciating the whole thing.
You
as
guys-
it
you
stands,
guys
and not
are
making
hippie love
conflict that's not necessary.
I agree, man. We need more shows like this
The
to voice
internet's
these
for,
opinions.
like news and
Well, we're
good
out of
things.
time now, Dave. That's pretty much the Climb Talk Road Show here at the Boulder Outlook Hotel. Currently we have Dave Graham and Chad Greedy on stage with myself, Mike Brooks, and Dave McAllister.
I think that one thing before we quit, I think Chad was talking about something that this show illustrates perfectly, is that if we can have more shows like this where we get community together and we have a mountaineer, an 8,000-meter mountaineer, we have an alpinist, we have a boulder, an artist, a great
That
sport
guy has a
climber,
mullet, man,
developers.
like-
we got
It's
guy
like
who's
in
setting world
a whole
records, a
genre
guy
of
with
his
a
own.
world-class mullet. If we can do this more
Yeah.
often, I think we're going to have a much more cohesive community.
I
So,
agree, man. I
Thanks
think
for
it's
you
good.
guys coming, and thanks for making this possible.
Thank you for joining us on Climb Talk. Now
Thank
we're going to
you.
do some
Thank
giveaway.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
And how are we going to do it?
Swag.
Thanks, JVonD.
Thanks, everybody. We're going to finish up with some giveaways here in a minute. Make sure your name's in with me or at the bar on a coaster. And we're going to finish up this little segment with Bob Horan. And he has a Boulder of the Week. Bob, can you tell us about this Boulder of the Week?
You know, I have no idea, but years ago, I realized I was like struggling to find new rock. So I thought, like, well, where haven't I hiked? So I would go. What I realized, probably the quadrant I hadn't expanded on was like Boulder Canyon. Since I'm a local, I mean, I didn't have to like drive there. So I thought, like, you know, where should I go? So
tell us about this Boulder of the Week, Bob.
Yes.
What is this?
So the Boulder of the Week really is like hiking a gully you haven't hiked. Like everybody wants to take the normal trails, right? And that's fine. I mean, and that's good. But over time, where haven't you hiked? So you look over there and you say, oh, there's a boulder, right?
So that's the Boulder of the Week. Thanks, Bob. We're going to wrap up the show. Hike a gully in Boulder Canyon. It'll be the best one you've ever done. First ascent, maybe the first descent as well. Dave McAllister, tell us about these giveaways.